Jace stumbled as the door to the alien flagship hissed open, immediately tripping over his own boots and smacking into the wall with a thud that echoed in the vast metallic corridor. He swore under his breath, brushing sparks off his jacket like they were tiny fireworks. The human soldiers always trained him for combat, but apparently no one bothered with lessons in how not to make a complete fool of yourself in zero gravity. His arms flailed, sending a stray tablet spinning into the air. It floated lazily toward the ceiling before bouncing off a magnetic strip and landing with a soft clunk. From the bridge above, Lysara watched, her long ears twitching in mild irritation that might have been mistaken for amusement. She leaned casually against the console, one hand resting on a sleek panel that shimmered with shifting data streams, and the other holding a warm cup of some phosphorescent liquid she had acquired from the planet below. "Really," she said, her voice calm but carrying a trace of mockery, "humans never fail to amaze me." Her eyes glimmered, the faint luminescence of her irises catching the ship's soft ambient light. Jace froze mid-step when a holographic display flickered to life in front of him, projecting a schematic of the ship and blinking a dozen red warning triangles around his current position. "Oh, fantastic," he muttered. "Now the ship thinks I'm a criminal mastermind, which technically I am at tripping over things." He waved at the floating console as if apologizing. The console, in a surprisingly dry tone, responded. "Affirmative, human. Your level of spatial incompetence is unprecedented." Jace blinked, unsure whether to be insulted or amused, and ended up choosing both. Lysara's lips twitched upward, and her ears flicked in a rhythm that Jace could swear almost looked like laughter. She leaned forward, pressing a hand against the rail and tilting her head, watching him like a cat amused by a particularly dumb mouse. "You're lucky I haven't ejected you into the vacuum yet," she said, a teasing edge in her voice that suggested she might have considered it purely for entertainment. Jace swallowed hard, his pride injured more than his body, which wasn't much. I'm just exploring," he said weakly, waving one hand like that would make his trespassing seem legitimate. "Exploring," Lysara repeated, tilting her head further, ears twitching in the dim light. "You mean sneaking around my ship like a very noisy, very clumsy rat?" Jace attempted a grin but ended up showing more teeth than charm, which only made Lysara's amusement grow. The ship's AI chimed in, its tone dripping with sarcasm. "Correction, the rat has been upgraded to a highly unpredictable hazard with a penchant for comedic collisions." Jace's blush deepened, and he muttered something that might have been a human equivalent of a curse word. He tried to steady himself, pressing against the nearest panel, but the magnetic field in the corridor flickered as if the ship itself were playing a joke. He floated upward slightly before slamming back down with a graceless thump. Lysara's ears twitched sharply this time, the movement quick and deliberate. "You know," she said, stepping closer, "I could remove you from my ship entirely in less time than it takes you to untangle yourself from that mess." Jace blinked at her, heart racing, not from fear exactly, though the threat was clear, but from the weird fascination he felt staring at a woman who looked almost human, but had these impossibly long ears and a poise that made every movement seem effortless. "And yet," she continued, a mischievous lilt entering her voice, "I find your antics oddly entertaining." Jace, forgetting for a moment to be terrified, almost laughed. He opened his mouth to respond, only to have a floating maintenance drone bump into him, spinning him sideways and scattering a pile of tools into the air. He groaned, catching one wrench awkwardly, feeling like a circus performer in a zero-G environment. Thank you," he muttered. Lysara's lips curved, the faintest smile tugging at her features while her ears twitched in an almost imperceptible rhythm. "You know," she said, stepping closer still, her silvery hair brushing a console as she did, "humans tend to make me bored rather quickly. You," she paused, tilting her head, "are different. Frustrating, yes, inelegant, certainly, but not boring." Jace blinked, unsure whether this was a compliment or a prelude to his ejection into space. Before he could answer, the ship shuddered as if sensing the tension, and Lysara laughed softly, a crystalline, musical sound that made Jace's knees weak in a way that had nothing to do with zero gravity. He attempted to gather some dignity, straightening his jacket and brushing imaginary dust off his uniform. "Well, Your Majesty," he said with what he hoped was a gallant bow, "I can assure you I have other skills. Useful ones. Definitely not just comic relief." Lysera raised an eyebrow, the long curve of her ears giving her expression an almost feline quality. Oh, she asked, do enlighten me, human. Jace swallowed. I can, disable security systems, hack doors, distract drones with my charming personality. The last part came out weak and even he knew it. Lysara's head tilted and her ears flicked again. Charming personality, she repeated, the words rolling off her tongue like a melody. I've seen many humans claim that and most fail spectacularly. You, however, may be the first to actually live up to the hype. Jace couldn't tell if he was flattered or about to be vaporized for hubris, but he smiled anyway. The tension of the moment was broken when the ship's AI piped up again. Warning. Human confidence levels exceed expected parameters. Probability of accidental self-destruction remains high. Jace groaned. I thought we were past the insults. Lysera chuckled, a sound like wind chimes caught in a solar breeze. Insults are one thing, she said. Watching you survive them quite another. She stepped closer, and the glow from the console reflected in her eyes, illuminating the delicate features of her face, the unusual length of her ears, and the way her silver hair seemed to float around her shoulders. Jace, ever the human, decided that discretion was now optional. Well, if survival is entertainment, I guess I'll keep trying, he said, narrowly avoiding another floating toolbox. Lysera's ears twitched sharply this time, almost impatiently, and she leaned on the console, smirking. Try as you might, she said, you will not leave my ship, at least not without my permission. Jace blinked at her, heart hammering. And what if I do? He asked, a grin spreading across his face despite the panic in his chest. She raised a hand, her long fingers brushing a holographic display, and the lights of the corridor shifted subtly, casting him in angular shadows. Then, she said softly, almost conspiratorially, you would discover exactly how fast my patience and my long ears can move when provoked. Jace laughed a little nervously and stumbled forward, nearly tripping again. Lysera only watched, amusement dancing in her eyes, the bridge of the ship alive with quiet, humming anticipation. The game, it seemed, had just begun. Jace woke to the hum of the ship's engines vibrating softly through the floor, or rather, through the invisible force fields that replaced the floor in this section of the flagship. Gravity had been partially restored, which meant he could stand without looking like a flailing noodle, but the ship still seemed to conspire against him. A loose panel near the ceiling shuddered and dropped a single blinking cube that bounced off his helmet. He caught it just in time, or at least he hoped he did, muttering, "This ship hates me, definitely hates me." From the bridge, Lysera observed him with a faint tilt of her head, long ears twitching like delicate antennae tuned to his every movement. "You really have a talent for surviving improbable disasters," she said, voice carrying down through the corridors via the ship's soft comms. "It's almost artistic." Jace rolled his eyes, but the ghost of a grin tugged at his lips. "Artistic, sure, I call it barely competent heroism." He balanced the blinking cube on one palm and gave it a little toss, catching it with the other hand. The cube hummed disapprovingly. "Don't judge me," he muttered. The ship's AI, still dripping with sarcasm, piped up. "Judgment unnecessary. Probability of self-inflicted injury remains high. Enjoy your daily miracle." Jace groaned. "Thanks for the moral support," he said, spinning the cube once and accidentally sending it into a vent. The cube rattled down the ducting somewhere in the bowels of the ship, and Jace swore softly. Lysera's laugh floated down from above, melodic and teasing, and he froze. Did you hear that?" he asked. "Yes," she replied calmly. "You sound like a human being who just lost his only friend to a ventilation shaft." "Delightful." Jace frowned. "I'm supposed to be a soldier, you know." Lysera's ears flicked, betraying her amusement. "A soldier," she repeated, "who trips over cubes, insults the AI, and talks to inanimate objects. Truly terrifying." Jace opened his mouth to protest, but was interrupted by the sudden flicker of lights along the corridor. Gravity pulsed again, shifting just enough to send him stumbling sideways into a holographic display. Panels blinked red, green, and blue, reacting to the collision as if the ship itself were sighing in exasperation. "You're lucky this ship finds you mildly entertaining," Lysera's voice echoed down from the bridge, soft and mocking. "Otherwise, we'd be cleaning up pieces of human biomass from the engine room." Jace groaned and rubbed the back of his neck. Mildly entertaining, that's somehow worse than being vaporized. He shuffled forward, bumping into a floating maintenance droid that beeped indignantly. Sorry, Mr. Dronington, he muttered. I promise I only trip on Fridays. The droid whirred in what he assumed was judgment, and the AI added, Correction, today is Friday. Predictable human failure confirmed. As he stumbled through the ship, Jace couldn't help noticing the little ways the vessel seemed alive. Doors shifted before he reached them, corridors widened unexpectedly, and a holographic map seemed to subtly redirect him. Once he had almost fallen into a service hatch, only to be caught by a soft but firm magnetic pulse that felt like a hand guiding him. This ship hates me, loves me, or both, he muttered. Lysara's laugh came again, and he realized it wasn't entirely the ship. I think she's enjoying this, he said aloud. Eventually, he arrived at the mess area, where trays of floating food hovered in zero-G containers. Jace grabbed a pack of something resembling dried fruit and attempted to eat it without it floating away. A stray cube from earlier bounced in midair and collided with the tray, sending a small orange sphere spinning past him. I swear this is like living in a cartoon, he muttered. Lysara's voice came softly, almost conspiratorially, over the comms. You really should practice your spatial awareness, or we could just assign you a cube as a pet. It seems fond of you. Jace froze, then laughed nervously. A cube pet? I could handle that. Probably. He balanced the spinning sphere between his palms, marveling at how alive everything on the ship seemed. He glanced at the holographic display in the corner, showing a detailed simulation of Lysara's command patterns. She really runs a tight ship, he murmured, eyes wide. Tight, but with a sense of humor. The display flickered as if the AI had overheard him and sighed electronically. Human insight, acceptable though unexpected. The rest of the day, or what he assumed passed for a day in the artificial lighting of the ship, was a series of minor disasters interspersed with equally minor triumphs. Jace managed to navigate a corridor without tripping over the same toolbox twice, though he still collided with a floating panel, sending sparks dancing around the ceiling. Lysara appeared beside him at one point, ears twitching, and handed him a small device. Try this, she said. It stabilizes your trajectory in low-gravity zones. Consider it a gift. And a minor test of your ability to follow instructions. Jace accepted it cautiously. A gift or a trap, he asked. Lysara tilted her head, the long sweep of her ears brushing the console. Why not both? She replied, smiling in a way that made Jace's heart skip a beat. He activated the device, and it immediately corrected his posture and balance as he floated down the corridor, a small miracle of engineering and alien benevolence. Well, he said, flailing slightly less than usual, this works. Lysara's laugh chimed again, softer this time, more approving. See, not all humans are complete disasters, she said. By the end of the cycle, Jace had survived floating toolboxes, sarcastic AI commentary, and the occasional teasing glare from the alien queen. And yet, despite every mishap, he felt a strange sense of accomplishment. The ship was not merely a vessel, it was a character in its own right, and Lysara, stoic, sharp, and impossibly graceful, was something he could never quite predict. The moments of humor, the teasing, and the small, almost imperceptible gestures of acknowledgement made the day feel lighter, even in the vast emptiness of space. As he settled into a floating berth for rest, Jace thought about the long hours ahead. This ship, he said to himself, might just be trying to kill me, but at least it's doing it with style. Lysara appeared in the corner of the room, her long ears brushing the ceiling, a smile playing on her lips. Sleep well, human, she said. Tomorrow the hazards increase, but so does the fun. Jace grinned, shaking his head, already anticipating the chaos of the next cycle. For all the danger, the teasing, and the improbable disasters, he felt strangely at home. Jace barely had time to react when the alarms blared, a sudden cacophony of red lights pulsing down the corridors of the alien flagship. Security drones, all sleek chrome and blinking optics, swarmed into the hallways as if on a choreographed hunt. Gravity flickered, shifting him sideways, and for a moment he felt like a marionette tangled in invisible strings. He grabbed a floating panel to steady himself, but it spun, bumping a console and sending sparks into the air. Perfect, he muttered. Absolutely perfect. Just another day in the life of a human disaster. From the bridge, Lysara watched, her long ears twitching in a rhythm that suggested equal parts annoyance and delight. She could have handled the drones herself in an instant, redirected them, or vaporized them, but she didn't. Instead, she let Jace flail and improvise because she had noticed something over the last few cycles. He didn't panic. He struggled, yes, he tripped, he made ridiculous noises, and yes, the drones might be laughing at him if they had emotions, but he didn't give up. He adapted, he improvised, and for reasons she couldn't quite admit aloud, she found that impressive. The AI's voice piped up, dripping with its usual sarcasm. Human survival probability, marginal. Human entertainment value, maximal. Jace froze mid-dive, staring at a drone as if seeking advice from the cosmos. Marginal, maximal, can I get a straight answer here? The AI hummed and replied, humor detected, probability of survival slightly increased. Jace blinked and then muttered, fantastic. Surviving because I'm funny, that's new. He darted between floating panels and holographic displays, using every trick he had learned from yesterday's near catastrophes. One of the drones lunged at him, sensors flashing, and he ducked just in time, the motion sending him spinning. A nearby conduit sparked, and the brief light illuminated Lysera's expression across the deck. Her eyes glittered, the faintest amusement tugging at her lips, and her ears flicked sharply. Careful, human, she said over the comms. I could let them catch you, but then I'd miss the show. Jace swallowed hard, adrenaline and laughter mixing in a dizzying cocktail. I'll try not to disappoint your majesty, he said. As he rounded a corner, he realized the drones weren't just random obstacles, they were her test. Each maneuver, each narrowly avoided collision seemed to teach him something about the ship, about timing, and about the strange rhythm of living aboard a vessel that was almost sentient. For the first time, he understood that the ship itself had a personality and somehow had taken a liking to him, quirks and all. He grinned, dodged another drone, and shouted, "Okay, ship, let's see what you've got." On the bridge, Lysera's ears twitched in amusement, but there was something else in her expression, a flicker of indecision, of something she had not felt in centuries. Jace was reckless, clumsy, infuriating, and yet he had survived everything she had thrown at him. Not because he was strong, but because he had learned, adapted, and somehow endured with humor intact. He had changed. He had grown. And for the first time, she realized her harsh decision to reject him had been premature. The drones converged, and Jace ducked behind a console, rolling over a magnetic floor strip and flinging one into a spinning drone with a well-timed throw. Sparks erupted. A drone stumbled, another floated sideways into a panel. Jace yelped, caught his balance, and with a desperate lunge, pressed a floating button that activated an override, one of the few systems he had actually learned to manipulate. The drones froze mid-motion, spinning harmlessly as the override rerouted their directives. He fell onto a panel, panting, hair sticking to his forehead, but victorious. Ha, that's right, human ingenuity beats superior alien tech. Lysera's voice, calm but tinged with amusement, floated down. Remarkable. She leaned over the console, silver hair catching the lights, ears twitching delicately. I was wrong to dismiss you so quickly. Perhaps human, you are necessary. Jace blinked, not expecting praise, let alone acknowledgement from a queen who had been poised to eject him into the void. Necessary me. I'm just trying not to break everything, he said, scratching the back of his head. The bridge doors slid open and Lysera descended the steps, ears flicking in rhythm as if testing the air. You are stubborn, she said, and oddly enough entertaining. The ship and I both see it now, your persistence. Jace, chest heaving, managed a crooked grin. Well, stubbornness is my specialty, he said, floating slightly as the gravity stabilized. And apparently surviving impossible situations. Lysera chuckled, her laugh a melodic trill that echoed in the corridors. And now you have earned your place on this ship, not as a trespasser, not as a curiosity, but as something more. The AI's voice cut in again, unexpectedly polite. Humans' utility confirmed. Long-term retention recommended. Jace laughed, almost out of relief, almost out of disbelief. He glanced around at the ship, at the blinking consoles and floating maintenance drones, and felt a strange sense of belonging. He had entered this vessel as a clumsy intruder, a comic hazard, and now he was part of the rhythm, part of its logic, and part of Lysera's increasingly curious regard. Do you trust me now? Lysera asked, ears twitching in the soft glow of the control panels. Jace thought for a moment, heart still racing, and nodded. I think I could, he said. Mostly because if I don't, I'll die spectacularly. Lysera's lips curved into a smile, a rare softness in her expression, and she stepped closer. Good, she said, because I have no intention of letting you leave, not now, not ever.